All right, so what's going on? We are revisiting gradual pressing. A couple of weeks ago, around the Techter, when the Techter expansion dropped, I had made a video discussing the gradual pressing reset. And what is gradual pressing reset? Essentially, when swapping weapons, the effect of gradual pressing, which is essentially after 40 seconds, after 40 seconds, it increases your down accumulation rate. Well, if you switch weapons, even if that weapon does still have the EX augment gradual pressing, it's going to reset. So every time you change weapons, you're resetting that effect back to 0. The reason why I made that video is because with the Celio weapon series, many of you might be holding two weapons, whether they're two Celios or a Wingard and a Celio if you're using Wingard as a PB stick. And in that last video, I had kind of positioned it as the gradual pressing swap being a not so great thing. But then I had to think about it because with the Techter expansion, one of the things they did was that they increased the down accumulation for Element Pursuit and of course Normal 4 because that has a Photonic Fury level 3. And for those who've been keeping up with my purple runs, if I don't make certain adjustments, like using wand levers without element, in certain cases, I will down the boss too soon, messing up my burst damage rotation. Essentially, I'll down the boss before my photon blast is ready. So then I started thinking about it and really understanding not only down accumulation, gradual press reset, but also how it interacts with enemies and enemy sequencing, and realized that, you know what? This gradual pressing reset is actually something that we as Techters can use to our advantage. And so what I want to do is I want to showcase two examples in a purple run of why this is the case. And so now, once again, don't worry about the speed or the damage. This is not a speed run. This is just to show why gradual pressing resets are something that, if you can, utilize. And I think we can all utilize it. It's just there are certain conditions that you'll need to make sure that when you utilize it, you're not hurting yourself in the long run. So in this first example, what we're going to do is we're just going to play through, and I'll stop at certain sections. Parts of the Starless Purple rank 3 quest, when I'm swapping, and why. Now for this first run, or for this first boss, what I wanted to see was, does swapping hurt my down accumulation timings? And so let's get into it. Now here, what did I do? I pretended that I am using, let's say, a Fixa Wix and a Fixa Unwix. And so in this situation, what I'm using right now is just my Duo Celio Wix and my Trio Celio attack. Doesn't matter. I'm just kind of mimicking what it would be if I switched from Wix to Unwix, because in this situation, Rasetsu starts with a gem, so he has a weak spot, so Wix is viable, but then when that gem breaks, Wix is no longer viable, but Unwix would be a viable option. So that's what I'm imagining in testing the scenario, but essentially here we make the first switch. Now here, once again, I make the switch again. Why? Because the gem has reappeared. So I'm acting as if I'm going back to wicks because that would be most optimal. But once again, seeing and tracking what this is due with my down accumulation, is it hurting me? And in this case, it does not. My down's a little slower, but that's fine. I still have Photon Blast ready. Wasn't too much of a detriment. Now, in this particular situation, I stayed with wicks just because I knew that the gym was coming back. Now, here's where things are important. Normally, if I would not use gradual pressing reset after this last Fomelgion, the boss is likely going to be downed. What I want you to pay attention to is the clock on my Photon Blast timer. I would have likely downed the enemy and had to have waited 7, 6, maybe seconds, or maybe even 8 seconds to be downed immediately before I'd use PB. Chances are what's going to happen is that I'm not going to have PB ready on down. I am going to have to use other attacks. Those other attacks will likely break the gem. And so then I'm using Photon Blast A when he's not down, B when there is no weak spot. But in this situation, because I have been swapping back and forth between two weapons, resetting gradual pressing, let's see what happens. And so there we go. Once again, we're not really worrying about damage or timing. It was just the concept of benefits of gradual pressing. In this situation, in resetting, I'm delaying down accumulation and thus allowing the down to align better with my Photon Blast. Of course, if you get crits and things like that, the time would improve, but we're not worried about that, especially since my weapons aren't technically optimal. I'm using a dual Celia. Now, what's important is that the next boss, which we're not going to show, I'm just going to talk to, and then we're going to move on to Herzig. The weapon swap and resetting gradual pressing at this point does not hurt you. The reason for that is because when you're fighting against the ballerina, when she's on her platform, physical and element accumulation do not occur. So you can reset all you want before that fight starts. It's likely going to take about 30 to 40 seconds before you break the platform. And so your gradual pressing at this point will have reset. Of course, she has a weak spot all the time, whether she's on her platform or not. And so I would use wicks. I wouldn't have to worry about weapon swapping, and I would not reset gradual pressing for that fight. Because the only time I can element down her is when her chest core is exposed, essentially. So having gradual pressing and pushing that allows me to down her before she goes into her second platform phase. This is another benefit of, or not really a benefit of, the gradual pressing reset or the swap, but just understanding, once you understand the specifics of a boss, then you understand when to swap, when not to swap, and the benefits of doing so. Now, specifically for benefits, we're going to get into Herzig. And so let's get into that. So simply swapping to another weapon, in this case my PB stick, and swapping back resets gradual pressing. What this is going to allow me to do is I no longer have to utilize the non-element wand technique to delay down. Essentially, in resetting gradual pressing, I have reduced my down accumulation enough to where I can still reliably use my kit without having to put any unnecessary constraints or restrictions on myself. And so, of course, the first round is successful. What I was waiting for was not my photon blast, just because I happened to have it from the last fight since I didn't need to use it, but waiting to make sure that I had both compound techniques so I can burst. First round is pretty easy, just because you kind of know where things are. Second round is where things get tricky, but this is where the gradual pressing reset comes in handy. So now you'll notice I activated wand levers. If anyone's been watching my previous videos, when activating wand levers and using it quote unquote optimally, this is going to push your element down heavily. In my other runs, usually what I would do is that I would build up element pursuit, use element pursuit with wand levers, but then not apply element. And so I would be building the next element pursuit without element on my wand, and then once I have that element pursuit, apply element, use it for the duration of wand levers. And the purpose of this was to delay that down accumulation. However, there's a consequence where you are losing damage, and now you're going to have to play mental gymnastics of, did I delay it too much? Or, you know, am I on the edge? So on and so forth. So let's see what I did to not have to remove the element, but also manage my down accumulation to make sure that my photon blast, which is in, if you can see on the screen, 76 seconds, making sure that aligns with the next down state. So right there, immediately, I reset gradual pressing just to kind of get a sense in starting from 0, and then I'll swap back to the main weapon. Now, what you can do, and I think this will be fine, I still have to test and play around with it. I didn't do it this cycle, but I'll do it in the next couple of cycles, is that after every element pursuit in this situation, I just swap the weapon so that I am removing down accumulation, and I'm using my element pursuit rate to essentially gauge that switch. And you see in this cycle, after element pursuit, reset. Now, I am still controlling my down accumulation. The way I'm doing that is that I am not opting for skip beat when I reapply element. Skip beat is a quick 2-hit attack, and it does a fairly good job of building element accumulation. Without wand levers, the frames are 50. So as you notice, I'm doing full wave crashes, which is about 97, 98 frames. And so essentially in doing a skip beat, especially with a technique, you're effectively doubling your down accumulation rate as you would if you just were to opt to using element to reapply wand and then doing your wave crash combos. Now, what I did there, just because it took a little while for my next element pursuit to build, I decided, you know what? I want to swap before I use element pursuit. And I think either option is fine. I really think it comes down to coordination and where it most makes sense. There might be situations where it doesn't make sense to swap because an attack is coming. So you want to kind of pick and choose. In this situation, I felt that though, because I am getting closer to his down state, want to make sure that that element pursuit is not getting that additional gradual pressing. So I reset before I use it. Now, I do it once more because I was not too sure if this next element pursuit was going to push it over the edge. And I still have 4.7, but at the time of the swap, 5-6 seconds left on my photon blast. So I decided to be a little conservative and not overshoot things just because 4 seconds on a 10-12 second down with Herzig is going to hurt me. So I played it safe. And let's see how it pans out. And as we see, right on the money. This is the power of gradual pressing that I had overlooked just because I had to think about a couple of different factors. And one of the things was, why did they give Techter increased element accumulation? It just seemed like they were putting us in a position that was a tad bit overboard. But I guess Sega is also communicating that gradual pressing for the class is kind of the go-to augment. When you're using wand, I'm not sure about Talus. That'll get a little interesting. We'll see in come December. But when you're using wand, gradual pressing is likely going to be an EX augment that you want to have. And so they made some adjustments with the element accumulation, allowing the swapping or the resetting of gradual pressing to kind of control these things. But as you'll notice, I never had to use any other techniques like the non-element wand levers to slow down my down accumulation, and just simply swapping, keeping things relatively consistent, relatively stable, timing my downs fairly well. Now, I do want to preface how this works without hurting you is that you want to have weapons that are of relative equal power. In this situation with Herzig, I was switching between my Wingard Blast Wand and my Duo Celia Wix. Technically, they are not of equal power. In reality, I would switch between my Trio Attack and my Duo Wix, or once I upgrade the Duo to a Trio, those would be the ones I switch back and forth from, just so that you're not dropping your damage too much. It's relatively negligible, but just being wary of that. However, if you don't have two weapons and you still want to use the gradual pressing swap, you can just find another wand to put on a pallet and you just swap to that when you want to reset and swap back. It's not that big of a deal. It's just things to be mindful of as you're balancing this out. So, hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any thoughts, questions in the comments, and I will catch you all next time.